What's got your attention in these arguments today?
Well, I think I would agree, I think, with most commentators so far that it does feel like the justices as a whole are leaning toward the plaintiffs away from the government and really challenging the government on their interpretation of the statute, on the delegation issues. Did Congress give this power, which is a congressional power, to impose tariffs to the president? We had Justice Barrett asking a lot of really pointed questions about the words in the statute, their meaning, and whether they encompass this authority.
It's obviously not over yet, and I'm wondering when you expect to hear a decision and if that will simply lead to another batch of tariffs based on a different emergency.
So the court is considering this case on an expedited basis at the request of the government and the plaintiffs. So we do expect, consistent with that, to have an opinion in a couple of months. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that's the expectation. And so that will be the moment of truth of whether these actions can continue. I do expect the administration to be already considering a plan B. We even have heard administration officials talk about other authorities that they may employ to put in place a similar tariff policy. The president is clearly very committed to this policy, to the negotiations that have been undertaken, and they'll find a way to pursue it. It may not be as flexible or as fast or have the advantages of this authority, but I do believe that they will find other means to essentially recreate the tariffs that they have today.
President Trump, as I mentioned earlier on Truth Social last evening, said the case is literally life or death for our country. If this is overturned and there needs to be some sort of refund program, Greta, how would it work?
Well, it's a bit to be determined, right? It will depend in part exactly what the opinion will look like. It will depend on what stance the government takes, whether they will be amenable to providing refunds with limited process. But in any event, the normal course is that each individual importer has to request the change in their entry, their customs entry, and the refund. And it's on a case-by-case individual basis. And I think as a threshold matter, one question will be, does the outcome of this case apply to everybody? Or does it just apply to the plaintiffs in this case, right? And so do other importers need to join a class action, bring another case in order to have the same right to a refund as the plaintiffs here?
If the tariffs were struck down again, what would be the formal investigation timeline? Because there is a process here, right?
Investigation to impose new tariffs.
Yeah.
It would depend on what authority the administration uses. They could quickly put some tariffs in place under this Section 122 authority that was mentioned in the arguments today, which relates to balance of payments, but it's a pretty low cap. It's temporary, but you could put it on quickly. Other tariff authorities, Section 301, these are the China tariffs that were put in place in the first Trump administration. Those take some time. It's an investigation, but the tariffs can stay on a long time. You can go up as high as you want potentially. So there's pluses and minuses to different authorities. Do they want to act fast? Do they want to act with the tariffs that ultimately will have the longest term and the greatest impact? Those are decisions that they would need to make. They've been seizing on some of the president's moves here that are considered a bit more erratic, like the recent extra tariff on Canada that was over a TV ad, what we saw in Brazil because of the way they were treating someone he considered a political ally. Will these moves and the rhetoric that surrounded them impact the outcome of this case? Well, it's certainly part of the atmospherics, right? As a technical matter, it shouldn't be part of the analysis of the key question, which is whether this statute confers the ability of the president to impose tariffs at all, right? Because once you get to that threshold, there is quite a lot of deference in the statute to the executive branch. This is an emergency power around foreign affairs. And in that sphere, there's just a lot of leeway given to the president to determine what is an emergency and what is the use of the powers that he has been given to address that emergency. And the question is one of those powers tariffs? Because if it is, I think there is a lot of discretion that can be used by the executive, and that's something that's forming the backdrop of the justice's consideration of this case. But really, and what their focus was today is on the words and what those words do or do not do as far as giving that power over from Congress to the president. Are you watching Justice Gorsuch, as Michael McKee suggested, Greta? Yes, I mean, he really pushed the government quite hard in the initial round of questionings. The government went first. He really seemed to go out there and say, I do see a major questions doctrine problem for you, government representatives. And, he did have tough questions for the other side as well. But, I think he did put that out there as a hurdle that the government is going to have to overcome. Well, you step back and look at this, and I don't know what the conversations are like when you're off the air and talking to your colleagues at the law firm, but whether it's this case, whether it's the court cases around the use of National Guard troops in American cities, the court cases around mass deportation raids, Greta, is this the golden age for lawyers in Washington? Well, I can only speak for trade lawyers, and I would say we are very busy, in fact, and we are watching this case very closely because it could have incredible implications, in the near term for companies, but also, going forward. Is this just setting a new standard and new parameters for what trade actions are going to look like going forward? I just got a note from Matt on the terminal, and it's important to our conversation we were just having about refunds. If we get to that point, would it not be a world in which the importer received the refunds and then would have to distribute money at some point there? Could it be an importer class action suit? Theoretically, yes. Small importers in particular, right? We're going to have thousands and thousands of individual companies. It would likely not make sense for each company to bring their own case, right? They're going to have varying tariff burdens that they have paid. And so class action is, one possible avenue to get that relief. But it is the importer. It is the importer of record who paid the tariff, who brought the product in, made the filing with Customs and Border Protection. And that's who will be requesting the refund in this case. Interesting. So how many more levers in our remaining moment, Greta, does the administration have to pull here if the court says no? It has several. It has, as I mentioned, 122. This is a balance of payments authority. It has Section 301, which is country by country, has some delay, more limited. It has the Section 232 tariffs. These are the sectoral tariffs where investigations have been started on a broad swath of sectors and products, which can at least partially replace the tariffs here. And it has even older, more obscure statutes that haven't been used. Section 338 with Justice Alito mentioned today that could be exercised. Yeah. And so it really has a menu of options, pluses and minuses across them. And so we'll just have to see what happens.